And that's the biggest thing where the customer really needs to do their homework is to make sure when they're picking their builder and somebody outside of the conversation of new homes, even in a remodel or any type of trade, if you're just simply putting a roof on your house, do your homework. Don't jump in because the guy has a low price, because that's the biggest scam people get. Anytime you're looking at a job, you should be within 5% of any other contractor. If you get multiple bids, you should not be no more than 5% one way or the other. And if somebody comes in and knocks somebody out of the saddle by 20%, beware. I mean, it's not happening if you're dealing with reputable people. And that is one good thing with HBA members. They've got a process to go through. They're known throughout the trades.
Hey y'all, and welcome back to our Century Check-In podcast brought to you by Century Bank, where we take banking personally. Today we have two special guests. Our COO here at Century Bank, Mr. Dan Garland, is with us, and he brought along his friend, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about Mr. Steve Greene. Mr. Steve is a contractor, home builder in the Alabama area, Mobile, Alabama area. So Dan, we're going to start with you this morning. Tell us a little bit about what you do here at the bank. You've been with us 13 years, is that right?
I've been here 13 years.
Okay.
Jill, I do a little bit of everything.
I know, I sure do.
I started back in 13 years ago, 2012. Started out as opening up the commercial lending department.
That's right.
And I've been in that role, and I am still in that role. And then about a year and a half ago, I became the chief operating officer.
That's right.
So a lot of hats, a lot of fun, a lot of great people. That's what makes it the best working with Century. So many good people around us.
It is. We do. We have a great team. We have a great team in both divisions. And so let's just expand on that a little bit. You, I think whenever you moved over to Century, we really expanded that, and you started and formed that commercial business banking department. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, again, that was back in 2012, and the bank had expanded into the Mobile market, and we really just needed to grow the commercial loan portfolio. And
we did.
And my background has been basically construction and development lending, and it was a perfect fit because Century loves doing construction and development lending.
We do.
So that's where we started, and that department has grown from just one person, myself, to 9 people now.
9, okay.
And it has really grown and done well.
It has. So with your background being in that, I know I spoke earlier and said Mr. Steve is a contractor in that area. Tell us a little bit, how do you and Mr. Steve know each other? How did y'all become friends?
Gosh, I met Steve back in the 90s, I think it was. And he was a successful up-and-coming home builder at the time. And we partnered together and have done many, many construction loans over the years, being contracts or specs, and then Steve also develops neighborhoods, and I got involved with doing some development lending for Steve on a couple of projects. So, gosh, over the years, we've probably done 30, 40 houses together and 2 or 3 nice subdivisions.
Well, great. Well, Mr. Steve, tell us a little bit about that. Touch on that. So I wanted to start, first of all, you own your own business, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And what's that called? Tell us.
My home building company is called Holly Homes.
Holly Homes, okay.
It's actually named after my daughter, and came from the carburetor. I used to be in the racing, and my wife said if we ever have a daughter, we're going to name it just like that. And that's why it's spelled Holley, like the carburetor.
Well, how about that?
Yeah, so that's how Holly Homes come to be.
Okay.
And I started out as a subcontractor, but I've been in new construction pretty much all my life. So I started out as a painter and owned an installation company. So coming from a subcontractor gives you the see both sides of the business world. You have more respect for your subs because you've been there, you've done it, you know how to handle things, and you understand the flow. And that's one of the important parts of doing business with Century Bank is to have that smooth transition when you do these loans to keep it moving. And what's good about Century, they're a really good community oriented bank. It's almost like dealing with, the term gets a little wore out, but it's true, more family type. So
Well, we appreciate you saying that. We pride ourselves in that, so we
Yeah.
appreciate it when people, tell us that that's how they feel about us. So, do you do residential and commercial, or do you only do residential?
pretty much just residential construction.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so, Dan said you also do development loans. So, tell us a little bit about that. The market's been up and down. We've kind of, slowed down a little bit with the rates going high. Tell us about, where do you see the market transitioning? Are we trending into construction, mostly into buying? Do you feel like people are starting to get back into constructing again?
It's slowly coming. But well, the good part about being on the Gulf Coast, we've been isolated because there's so much development coming. I mean, we're in the multi-billion in new development that's actually coming in the next 2 to 3 years to the Gulf Coast, which ranges from Mississippi to the Florida coast. I mean, we're predicted even in the next downturn not to be affected. That's how good our business and how much development is coming towards the coast right now. The biggest problem is supply and demand. The supply is not there. The last time the market crashed, there was over 4,000 or 5,000 units sitting there. Today, there's less than 400, and that's
Yeah.
Mobile, Baldwin County I'm talking about, which
Right.
is, and with the interest rates being so low a few years ago, a lot of people are not moving out because of the low interest rates. So the supply is really low on resale because nobody's wanting to give up that mortgage rate right now, which mortgage rates, even though where they're at today are still great, because you got to remember, I've been doing this 40 something years, and back in the 80s, it wasn't uncommon to have a 15% mortgage rate. Most people would think that was a charge card.
Oh, wow. That's
So-
wild. 15%.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my first mortgage rate was not in the nines.
Oh, and we got people having a heart attack about the 6.5
That's
right now.
correct.
So
That's
yeah,
correct.
that really is important, especially for the younger adults that are building now. A few years ago when the market dropped and we were at 3%. Now we're at 6.5, and they just think it's outrageous. But like you said, it's really not. Tell us a little bit about you alluded to supply and demand. So how do you see the impact on the cost right now? Is it rising? Is it holding as far as cost and labor, things like that?
Well, unfortunately, prices have steadily went up. It started with lumber right at 2020 is when it first really started moving. And lumber was the first major move in construction in years, because everything has been pretty steady over the years. And then lumber basically doubled in a very short period of time. And unfortunately, they backed off. But then the other suppliers filed a suit, which was plastics and electrical, copper, and all that. And a lot of people think, well, I'm gonna wait it out. But unfortunately, we've had a 4-year trend where nothing has really retreated. We've had very few drop in prices. And every month, I'm still continually getting increases
Yeah.
in roofing and plumbing as well. And lumber has come down, but it's still considerably higher than it was. And unfortunately, you're looking at about a 30 to 40% increase in 4 years. I mean,
Wow.
that is huge.
That is.
And then tied in with the current interest rates, and that's what hurts people. Construction costs was low, interest rates was up a little bit, but now you kind of running both ways. And a lot of people want to sit the fence, but I've had a lot of people that set the fence now is totally priced out of their market, and they cannot do anything.
We actually was talking to Dan about a customer last week that I've had. He's truly been waiting, and he's very conservative, which we actually appreciate in a customer nowadays, that they're trying to be mindful of what their situation is. But he's just about priced himself out of the home that he actually wanted to build. So he's actually kind of backing up and like rethinking his plans, changing his mind, because he has a dollar amount that he does not want to go over, but yet this house that he wanted now is not going to be built for that dollar amount. So it is kind of a struggle to, navigate that with the customer, the client, the owner, just to try to get what they want, but try to, like on our side, keep them, where they need to be as far as their budget and how that works. Tell us a little bit about, your experience with recent like developments. How do you prefer to do developments, spec houses, or do you just really like the custom start to finish build for the individual.
Well, the good news, bad news, as you get older, you take less risk.
Okay.
And fortunately, I had to go through the downturn of the last downturn, but with great pride, we did it. We kept true to our standards and came out with a smile and happy customers. So I don't do as much development. I do mostly new construction now. It's pretty much all I do. I haven't done no development. So I got a few small projects in the works right now. And the thing you hit on a minute ago, budget. That's the key thing. I mean, that's really the holy grail of what we're talking about. And the biggest thing that people's got to know and understand when you talk about budgets is the whole number. People look at it's sort of like buying a car. You got to have the whole car. You don't just look at the main part of it. From the design and engineering, which used to be 10, 20 years ago, wasn't no big deal. You'd spend $2,000 to design and engineer a house. I mean, your blueprints, no big deal. But now with all the current rules and regulations, I mean, you expect to spend anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 on just getting your plans drawn and your engineering, and not only the cost of it is the time frame. You're looking at an additional minimum 2 months. It's typically 3 months by the time you get that done. The only thing, the good news during that period, you can be working on your financing. So that's one of the things people's got to look at is as a true time frame of, what your goal is. Number one is budget, no question, and the golden number for everything, and that's start to finish. And that's one of the things we take pride in, or I take pride in when I quote my houses out, is to hit every item on the list that most people don't think about. From simple surveys to getting a perk test done,
Right.
to the final sod on the ground. People don't think about, well, and just like we talked about earlier, the cost. People don't think no big deal about grass or something, but $5,000-$10,000 in the yard,
Sod, that's right. It adds up
and
quickly.
that's it.
Well, also too, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. Do you do any builds in Mississippi and Georgia, Jackson counties?
I do.
You do?
I'm state licensed in Alabama and Mississippi.
Okay,
Yeah.
I asked Ian that, and I
Yeah.
thought that's what he told me.
Yeah.
So one thing that is so drastically different for us at the bank for Alabama and for Mississippi, in Jackson County they have building codes, but in George County we have not adopted those. So there's a wider area for builds of just whatever kind. But I know in Alabama you'll have the Homebuilders Association. You have very strict building codes within the county and the city. How does that relate to the consumer? I know price-wise, when we've done a few, just in relation to the construction loans we do for just our county, George and Greene, with no building codes, and then when we've crossed over to have a client in Alabama, there's a drastic difference in the process, in the hoops you have to jump through to get those tests, those certifications, all those inspections. What, from your standpoint as the contractor, how does that play into what you do?
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing where the customer really needs to do their homework is to make sure when they're picking their builder and somebody outside of the conversation of new homes, even in a remodel or any type of trade, if you're just simply putting a roof on your house, do your homework. Don't jump in because the guy has a low price, because that's the biggest scam people get. Anytime you're looking at a job, you should be within 5% of any other contractor. If you get multiple bids, you should not be no more than 5% one way or the other. And if somebody comes in and knocks somebody out of the saddle by 20%, beware. I mean, it's not happening if you're dealing with reputable people. And that is one good thing with HBA members. They've got a process to go through. They're known throughout the trades. And with the building codes, that's the next thing. When you're hiring somebody, especially in the rural areas like we are over here in Mississippi, you're really dependent upon that person to build to the standard that it needs to be built at. Just because the code's not there, there's basic recommendations to build things by, and that's what should be adhered to.
That's right.
In Alabama, we have to build to the International Building Code, which is twofold, because number one, with the code that we build by, actually meets what's called fortified. I don't know if y'all have heard about the fortified program that for insurance, which is huge for people that live along the Gulf Coast along through here. Even if you're building in a rural community that don't have the rules and regulations, you can still qualify for fortified houses. And the good news is the basic building codes have gotten so stringent that now you don't have to add anything extra. So if you come to me to build a house, you're getting a fortified house just by naturally through the building code. You still got to pay to have it qualified in inspection, but the inspections cover all that.
And that'll save you, what, 20% on
up,
your
up to
homeowner's insurance?
60%.
Wow.
Up to 60. It's huge. It's huge. I mean, you take a $600,000 house, and most insurance would be in the $6,000 range, and you're getting the $2,200. So and it's not really costing you other than the inspection part to be certified there, which is typically under $1,000.
Right. I know we've went back and forth. We've actually had several conversations, us Mississippi lenders, with Dan and Chris, about just the drastic difference in that. And it's a political kind of thing here in our county. You know, it's back and forth. You have some people who are in favor of trying to, go that way to put some type or some degree of building codes in place. So we've had a lot of growth in our county too. So
And I think that's why it's so important to really do your homework on your builder,
yes,
because you get the wrong person and you really don't have a lot of control. And so you got to get that right builder. You got to review their contract and their budget they're giving you, because some builders will bid the job low just to get the job, but you got to actually look at those individual breakdowns of those costs. Can I buy all my appliances? The appliance budget's $5,000 and it's going to cost $20,000. Well, then that's a problem.
it
You got to
is.
really look at that. Your lighting budget, your plumbing fixture budget, your flooring budget, and you got to make sure that you can build what you want within that budget. So
That's right. And it's a slippery slope for us as the banker. Our customer, they look at us to kind of really navigate that for them. But yet, we're just here to service what you apply for and we approve you for. But a lot of times we have to try to direct that and help our consumer go in the right direction. My thing is that you have to remember cheaper is not always better in quality or quantity. So we do try to, really educate our consumer, especially here when they're trying to decide on a builder. And especially if we haven't heard of them, we really try to kind of help them do our homework just to kind of see where they are. So backing up to the Home Builders Association, let's talk about that just a little bit. For those of us who don't really know a lot about that, give us a little overview of that.
So I've been involved with the Home Builders Association since 1992, but it really starts on a national level. There's the National Home Builders Association, and then each state has a state Home Builders Association, and then that filters down to, in Alabama, I think we've got probably about a dozen chapters around the state. In the Home Builders Association, you are vetted and you are held to a higher standard. If you are using a builder that's a member of the Home Builders Association and you have a problem, they have a standard and ethics committee that you can go to
Okay.
and try to resolve issues. But it advocates for builders, it advocates for legislation that supports building. I think there's a lot of instances where the insurance industry tries to push down a lot of really expensive regulations
They do.
that becomes the building code. And the home builders, we want to build the best possible house, but it has to be affordable and it has to be reasonable. So, that's what the home builders is doing, is they're looking out for affordability, and they're looking out for the legislation that's that's taking place to set all these different type of regulations.
Right. And I know you said you've been a member for a long time, and so you've actually served, I know you served as the president of that organization at
I'm
one
not the
time.
president. The president has to be a builder.
Okay,
So you
all
have
right.
builder members, and then you have associate members. And I have been
Okay.
the chairman of the local associate council level, and I also
Okay.
serve in that role on a state level as well.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah. So the Home Builders Association is made up of builders and lenders also.
Just associates, subcontractors,
Okay.
vendors, suppliers. So it's
Okay.
just a great network for builders to operate within, and they can also, share their issues with one another. And if they're all having common issues, they'll get together and try to, reach out to local officials to make some changes. One of the things in Mobile is the permitting process is just very, very difficult and
It
long.
is.
And we've been fighting for 20 years to try to get that streamlined. And, I don't know where it would be had we not been fighting for the last 20 years. We still think it's pretty bad, but
It is quite the process. Just the few that I've actually done over in Alabama. Now, Mr. Steve, you're also a member of the Home Builders Association. Is that correct?
Long-term member, yeah. I
Okay.
go all the way back to 1984 with my paint
Wow.
company. So
Okay.
yeah, and like I said, it's good relationship building and trades. And the thing you got to remember when you're dealing with subs through there and reliable people, time is money, and that's one of the biggest concerns when people research their builder or remodeler, or whatever they're looking for, is check the people's track record on time, because most construction lending is done in yearly basis, and you got to keep in mind that 3 month I told you about in design and engineering, and you get caught up in there, so you're running into your construction time, the time your construction closing to the actual start of your construction, because builder drags your house out year and a half, 2 years, the interest is going to add significantly to your cost and your budget, and it's tough and explain when you get into a job and they don't come back the numbers that you was promised. It goes back to the budgets. If this guy's giving you a $50 faucet budget, in reality the average cost on a faucet in the $250 to $500 range now, if you can believe that. I mean, it's just crazy.
On a faucet.
On
How
a
about
faucet.
that?
Kitchen. I mean, not kitchen faucets range around in the $250 to $500, and somebody throws a $50 budget. And that's the big thing. You got to an apple is an apple. You got to make sure when you're looking at a quote to lay them side by side, look at what you're getting, because you want your dream home to be a dream, not a nightmare.
That's
I
right.
mean, and you buy something thinking you've got the best deal, then when it comes time to start picking out your selections and everything, you're going to end up disappointed. So
Yeah.
make sure.
A lady that formerly worked here that trained me, that I started working under, she always told the customer whenever they started that construction loan, this is a marathon, this is not a sprint. You got to really work to get through this process. And I used to, when she was training me, I was like, that is so weird. Wonder what that means. But like, I truly I have that understanding now with, being in this lending part for so long, and helping customers through that process. So start to finish, I'm glad you mentioned that. So start to finish, when you actually start on-site construction, what is your typical time frame for the turnaround, start to finish? Once you get past all the upfront, when you actually start constructing?
Yeah, I advise people to plan on 3 months for your planning and engineering and such, and then my typical construction time runs between 6 and 8 months on an average house. An average house I call between 2,500 living area to 3,500 living area. You're gonna have porches and garages. So that gets you in that year time frame. And one of the things that people also got to consider or think about when we talk about construction, people want to talk about square foot. How much is my house going to cost me per square foot? Well, the average house, like I said, ranges in the 2,000 square feet. Then you average garages around 400 feet. Your porches are typically around 200 to 300, and that's kind of that number there. But a lot of people want to go drop a 2,000 square foot house and add 1,800 square feet of porches and garages and think it's going to cost the same. And they've added that extra porches and stuff, so you can't really use that square foot price. And that's one of the things that I run into a lot is people, go in eyes wide open in a set of plans, and then they get the plans back, and they've spent, like we talked about earlier, the first part of the design is the plans, and that typically runs about $1 a square foot. You got 30-something hundred under square feet, so you just wasted $3,000 or $4,000 because your budget's not there. So you got to go back to the drawing board and start slicing and dicing. And so you got to give a lot of thought, on the front end of that golden budget number.
You do. And I think with our rural area, porches are so appeasing to the eye. And we have so many customers that really want those large wraparound porches until they start trying to cut that magic number to see how they can make that cheaper. So we do see that a lot, how they don't really take that into consideration because, like you said, it's not under roof, not living area space. So,
I will typically advise my customers, if they're at the very beginning stages or they're just buying their lot, to, sit down with the builder, look at some of the plans they've got. Steve has built hundreds of houses, and he knows what those houses cost to build, as opposed to ordering a set of plans out of a magazine. Look and see what he's got, see if he's got something that is close to what you want and that can potentially be modified to what you want. And he knows the best way to build that house because he's built it probably a couple of times before.
Right.
At least that's a good starting point. You can get an idea. Now, if you want something completely different, then that's a different story. But I think that's a good place to start so people can get an idea what their budget's going to be and what it's going to cost.
That's a great idea. That is. That's a great idea.
And then the budget side of things, just kind of put it in perspective where we've went in these last 4 years. 4 years ago, I would tell you $120 a square foot for a house. Today, unfortunately, it's $200 a square foot. And that's a custom home total package. And back to what I just mentioned a bit ago about the porches. Naturally, porches don't cost as much as a house. I mean, so typically porches is running that $90 to $110 a square foot. So you can't. Then that 200 foot will back off a little bit when you break it down that way. But when I bid my houses out, I bid them out, piece by piece, not by square footage. But then I run the numbers at the end just to kind of see where it works out.
Okay.
So today, somebody going in and you're looking at a minimum for a custom built home. Now there's some site builders that build less inexpensive homes, not as custom. You're going to get it for less than that. So
for the first time home builder, if they're watching, so you would quote them a square footage price under roof, heating and cooled, and then you're going to quote that porch space at a different square foot price, and then you're going to put those numbers together.
yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good I think that's really good information for the consumer to know. Also, too, Mr. Steve, we do a lot of land loan financing here. We know in our market here, and we feel like in the Alabama market, we really truly have the most competitive land financing product. So but the one thing that we do run into is our customers are a little bit impatient. They're ready. They purchase that land. But they're ready to build before they really build up their equity in that property, or they build up their savings to get started in that house. So is that something that you see with your clients when you're talking to them, that when they're ready to get started, they may not have really taken into consideration how much equity they actually need to have in that property if they don't have it paid for in full?
We do. That's one of the concerns, is the equity in it, and one of the things also when they're shopping for lots, and I've used in my customer views y'all's lot loans, and they've been very pleased with it. Y'all have a good program there. Is just like shopping for a builder, when you shop for a piece of dirt, if you go into an existing neighborhood and you're getting this great deal on the lot, look very close at that lot. Most of the time they're sloping, they have issues, environmental issues, and that's another thing that comes into cost of lots nowadays in a lot of the cities like Mobile and Baldwin County. It's a whole new cost to this market, is the environmental side, because now, because of all the heavy rains and everything, they're making most every residential lot in Mobile and Baldwin County now do water retention, which is a big game changer. I mean, we're adding, you're talking of $8,000 to $15,000 to the cost of new construction now, and plus losing some of your yard, because you got to retain that water and hold it for I'm not sure that's 30 minutes to. Just like they do in commercial developments, well, it's now in residential as well. Most older neighborhoods did it all in one detention pond, whereas now they're making them do it on a lot by lot basis. So that's another. We're the most overregulated business, period. We've had 27% increase in regulations in the last 10 years.
Well, we actually feel like we're the most overregulated business, don't we?
We're a close second.
Yeah,
sure.
but we understand what you mean, though. We
Yeah.
understand. Well, that's great to know. Like, I really am not familiar with water retention, and is that just, are you talking about in like the lower lying, like the flood prone areas, or are you just talking about across the board?
Straight across the board.
Okay.
What's the trigger for that? It's got to be over so many square feet, or
anything over typically in Mobile, it's 4,000 square feet. If you're disturbing more than 4,000 square feet, but the average house is around 2,800 square feet, then by the time you had a driveway, so basically 95% of what is being built now falls under this.
Okay, and so bottom line, just estimate, right off the top of your head, so what is that? Like, how much is that adding to the cost that you have to provide this retention issue? Like
minimum, probably $5,000. I've done one just recently that hit almost $15,000, maybe even $20,000
for just a retention wall?
No. The typical example, one we just finished,
Okay.
is you basically have to take all your water on your lot and send it to that pond. So
Okay.
therefore, you have to shape the whole lot, driveways, sidewalks, which may mean pipes under driveways and such. Then it's got to go to a pond, and then from that pond, are they going to take it straight to the street, or are they going to make you go into a storm drain? Well, this last one we did, we had to actually go into the storm drain, which is major. I mean, we had to build a 4-foot pipe basin for the pond to go into.
Wow.
And it was very challenging and expensive.
And that's mostly in the development areas, in the subdivisions and things like that.
And the purpose of that, unfortunately, we don't have rainstorms no more, where everything seems to be tropical and major wind driven. I mean, 30 and 40 mile an hour winds and rains, showers. And the purpose of that is to, instead of flooding the lower lying areas, it holds it and slowly releases it. So, I mean,
So how about in the county? Is that a requirement?
Mobile County is not pressing that. It's strictly the city of Mobile right now. And I know in Baldwin County, a lot of the municipalities there are requiring it as well.
Okay.
And that's another thing is that goes with the environmental side of things is, a lot of people don't budget for silt fences and such like that. not a huge cost, but it's another $1,000 that you need to look at, because that's a requirement. Because you being the homeowner, another key thing is you need to make sure that your builder, that goes back to the HBA, is licensed, bonded, insured. Because
right.
something happens on that job site, you're ultimately responsible for, because you own the property.
That's right.
So if somebody's out there working and don't have workman's comp and they get injured, it's coming back to the homeowner.
So I really feel like this retention that you're talking about, water retention, that's something that they really need to be looking at as they're searching for the property, the land, not when they get ready to build the
Exactly.
house. That's something they need to take into consideration when
Yeah.
they're looking at their property.
Absolutely, and just the expense of clearing a lot. If you've got a wooded lot,
Exactly.
what's a lot to clear an acre lot or just a building pad on that? You're going to spend $20,000, aren't
Yep,
you?
which used to be $5,000 10 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
my go-to number was $5,000. Now it's $20,000 for a wooded lot. I
Isn't
mean,
that
and you're going
wild?
to use just about every bit of it. And like I said, that goes back to the first comment we talked about, the total budget,
The total
because the
budget.
little pieces and parts that add up that
Yeah.
are budget breakers.
Well, that is, and that right there, Mr. Steve, is something that I had no idea
Yeah.
about. I guess we don't. I don't feel like here that is something we talk about or a big thing. Of course, we have a lot of ours is built rurally in our county, not always in our city. So we have a lot of people that build on their multiple acreage property and not just one lot. But we, in the last 5 years, have had a lot of developments happening here, which has caused a few hiccups and a little bit of heartache in our, just in our county and our city, just with the things that go along with that, like the sewer, the drainage, and just things that need to be upgraded because of trying to take on or handle that big of a development happening. So we have had some challenges in the last few years, trying to make those work. And also, a few of those houses that we started out with in one development, they didn't take all that into consideration before, so they actually had to come back to the table. We had to kind of do some rearranging to work that out with them.
Water and sewer is another huge part of the job.
Yeah.
And that ranges so much because being a low-lying area, which we are in Mississippi and Alabama and Baldwin County throughout there, the old conventional septic systems that used to cost a couple $1,000s is now the average septic system's in that $600 to $7,500. And then when you get into what's called a engineered system, where you have to have pumps and stuff like that, you're in the $20,000 to $25,000 range.
Yes.
And then most city taps where you have sewer range in roughly around $2,500 up to $8,000. We just recently had one in the $6,000 range. And that's just the permission to touch it.
Oh, wow.
You're not getting nothing done. You're paying the tap fee, because what happens in a lot of this goes back to our lot purchases. When you're shopping for a lot, you need to also look at the water and sewer availability and the cost of it, because if you're on a older neighborhood, they may have had to do an upgrade, and how they pay for that upgrade is through future taps that touch that line. So basically, if a customer or a municipality has to spend money on that line, it's getting passed down the line, and somebody's going to pay for it, and that's why you have them higher prices. Sticker shock. Something you don't think about until you go to buy that water and sewer tap, which typically happens at the beginning of construction. And that's why it's best to lean on a builder with some knowledge, because it's free to shop. Right?
Absolutely. That makes me a little nervous. I don't know if I wouldn't feel very educated if I was going to want to build a house in Mobile right now. I would have to rethink that and do a lot of research on that.
I think if you're going to buy a lot in the city of Mobile, you need to have your builder to be a part of that
Right.
investigation on that lot, so you understand exactly what you're getting into and what your costs are going to be. If you're out in the county a little bit, out on some land that's a little bit different, or if it's family land, you're going to build there, that's a whole different story.
Right.
But there's a shortage of lots in Mobile and in Baldwin County right now. There's just not a lot of new developments that are taking place. The new large developments are going to the big tract builders, so it's tough to find a good lot out there.
How much developing do you do on the Mississippi side? Do you just like George Jackson right here on the state line?
Basically along the coast right through there, past school along through there.
Okay.
And just on the development side of things, just unfortunately with the cost we were discussing earlier, 10 years ago you could put a road in for $350 a foot. Today it's $1,000 a foot.
It is.
I mean, it's just, and
It's
then just the
wild.
cost, just how much everything has increased over the last few years.
Yeah. And also too, I don't really know if this applies in the city or Mobile, but here rurally, I had a customer who they bought a property in remote rural Greene County, which is north of us in George County. That's their dream property, and they ready to build that house, but they got ready to put the power in, and it was quite a chunk of money to the power company to get that power in there. So they had to come back to the table. We had to really kind of discuss that, kind of go back to the drawing board, see how we were going to try to help them, meet them in the middle, if we could help them, absorb some of that cost somewhere. So that is a new thing, an issue for a lot of our customers who are still wanting to be remote and rural on their property, away from the road, away from where the power line hookup is. I mean, they're going to give you so many feet, but after that, you're going to have to pay to get it in there to you. So that has been real eye opening to a lot of our younger customers.
And that's that not only just the cost of it is that once again that's a time factor because unfortunately every corporation has cut back so much you don't have the one-on-one service like you used to in the old days. You could pick up the phone and talk to your rep. Now you have to deal with a 1-800 number, and where something that used to take a week now takes 6-8 weeks to get power hooked up.
It
I mean that's
does.
another. And if you're ready to start construction, we do use generators, but it gets expensive.
Yeah. Well, what advice would you give to the younger generation, the younger couples who maybe are building their first home, but not their dream home, but they still want it to be a home that they're really proud of, that's really nice, but yet like an investment that they could resell it later if they're wanting to build the dream home later. Just, affordability without sacrificing the quality of it.
The big thing there is probably just location. I mean, people want to be by their cousin or somebody like that, so may not be as desirable if they're doing it as a stair stepping house. And that's a lot of problem with family plots. When people do family plots, they got to remember they're eventually one of them family members is going to move, which is going to open that house to an outside family member.
That's right.
And most people want to keep their family plots as truly a family plot. So that's one of the things to think about. And look at the resale history of your neighborhood as you go into it, because it's a home is still the best investment. I mean, real estate pretty much continually goes up, so you're going to build that equity to be able to step up. Unfortunately, the last few years we've had the inflation kind of hurt us on the, it's double edged. A lot of people, I just made $250,000 on my sale, but then turned around, it's going to cost you $400,000 to build a new house. So in reality, you did good, but you didn't.
Yeah, that's true too. And also too, just with our clients who we see doing that, more so I think in the Alabama market and not in Mississippi, that resale factor comes into play. We have, I would say, maybe not the majority, but a little bit more than half of our customers, our clients, don't typically build that stair stepper house. Like, they may not stay in it forever, but they're saying right now it's permanent, and then maybe 10 years later down the road they'll decide which way they want to go. But if they're on that family land, like you said, that's going to be a little heartache to them. So, well, let's talk about Dan, just a little bit. Like, how did you and Steve, just give us a little background about how y'all came to work so closely together?
Well, I think it was just a good fit. We have all the confidence in the world with Steve. So when he brings a customer to us and we do the construction financing and the permanent financing, they're going to get a good product. They're going to be happy with Steve. Steve has many repeat customers. He's built 3 and 4 houses for the same people. So my confidence level has always been very high with Steve. And then on our end, we just try to do what we say we're going to do every time. We want to deliver good customer service, or the best customer service. I think the way we have our mortgage department set up, where we have one person that handles the permanent and the construction loan all the way through. And then Mobile, that's Michelle Kirkpatrick. And Steve actually built Michelle's house.
Oh, how about that? Okay.
But anyway, so Michelle's does a great job. She takes that from start to finish, from the construction to the permanent financing. So I just think we just work well together. He has confidence in us. We have all the confidence in him, and it's just been a good relationship. We've done a couple developments over the years, and they have all gone well. He's he's really diligent on his planning, and again, I think it just goes back to the confidence level.
It does. It does. I know we met you for the first time last year at a concert. We were hosting a few clients at one of the concerts on the coast, and I know we Lacey and Misty and I had a chance to meet you there, and so we really enjoyed getting to know you and your wife. I think, and your daughter came. Was it your daughter there
That's
too?
correct. Yeah,
Yes.
Polly, yeah.
Yeah, and so the concert was good, but we enjoyed the conversation too.
Yeah.
So I was glad we got to meet you then, because Dan had told us, what a great person you are, and we also, I think we had a couple of clients that we knew here locally that maybe knew you and knew your reputation about building and stuff like that. So that went over well too. Tell us just a little bit about whenever you are maybe your client hasn't got their financing yet. Maybe they're starting with you first. Are there tips that you give them when they're looking at a lender, looking for a bank? I mean, I know you work with all the banks, and we're not asking you to give us the shout out every time, but in your expertise and when they're asking for your advice, like what do you typically tell them to be looking for in their lender, in their bank?
Well, that's basically what I explained to her. That goes back to our relationship with Century, because the bulk of the construction firms and stuff we do is with Century Bank, and our customers have been very pleased with it. And like I said, Michelle, who handles it, does an excellent job of making it transition. And like I said earlier, you just plan on that 6 to 8 week time to make all that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a good, smooth transition, and I'm a hands-on builder. I'm one of the few people that's still on the job almost every day. As when it comes to a trade, I joke, the jack of all trade, the master of nothing.
Uh-huh.
So I do most of my own service work and all.
Okay.
Because what you want at the end of the job is you want a happy customer and a happy builder. And I can say proudly that most of my customers are still my friends today. I mean,
Okay.
it's, that relationship at the end of the job is golden. I mean, you want to go to that closing table with a smile on your face.
That's right.
And that's why in the process, you got to make sure you've covered all your bases on all your cost and everything that goes with it. And that's why I suggested earlier that, the initial quote should be 3 to 5% high, because you can always leave that money laying on the table. It's very difficult to go in and get additional money along the way.
It is.
And that's the biggest problem that happens in the business. And, buyer beware, do your homework.
Mm-hmm.
And don't have a lot of change orders. That's you've got a budget, you got to stick to that budget. So if you decide, well, why don't we push this wall here? Why don't we do this? It all costs money, and then at the end of the day, you're going to run short on your cash. So if you're going to make a change, which does happen, talk to the bank to make sure the money's going to be available for you. Loan might have to be increased if something pops up like that.
It might, and I think sometimes the consumer, the customer thinks that that's no big deal, but it is quite the hoop for us to jump through sometimes to increase that number. Do you find that a lot though? Or I feel like that, just with you talking to us now, that you really take the time to educate your customer before you actually get into the building process. But do you find that a lot of people wait till they get in the middle of the construction when they want to start changing things?
Most of my people that come to me have pretty much done their homework. A lot of them have come from past customers, and that's the good part. They've been in the house, they've seen what's there.
Mm-hmm.
They know budget wise. When I give the quote, I refer to it as a Holly home. They know what the quality trim we do, how we build out our closets. Closets is one of the probably the key things most people want.
Yeah.
And you don't think about it till it's time to do it. And we built some really impressive closets and such. And budget wise, because I put that extra 3 to 5% in there, you have a little bit of breathing room when you want to upgrade something, because you are going to have savings. I mean, there's some things that, when I do the figuring on there, I'm figuring to the high side.
Mm-hmm.
So, lumber package, without craziness that has happened, we typically have a fairly good savings on your lumber and your foundation when you start a house, which is good for the customer because that's their money and that's their allowance. And then they get to take that money and transition it into other places that, hey, I want to upgrade my cabinets now a little bit, or some flooring or something like that.
Yeah. Now, you said earlier that you were a painter and all that. So with your custom homes, do you custom the cabinets yourself, or do you have a subcontractor that works directly with you?
I have all subcontractors.
Okay.
Pretty much Holly Homes is myself.
Yeah.
And I pretty much handle everything for my wife helps me with some stuff, but pretty much helps. The customer deals with me start to finish on that. And, we have a custom cabinet builder. Basically, my homes are 100% custom.
So you use the same subcontractors, and you guarantee and you stand behind that work also.
Most all my people have been with me. I almost want to say forever.
Oh wow!
I mean, like
okay.
it's but that's the secret to success, and that goes back to what I was telling you earlier about being a subcontractor. The importance of respect and being paid. I respect what they do; they respect it. It's a two-way street, and people stump their toe, and I'm not one of them guys that say, "See ya." I mean, we're here for the long haul.
Okay.
And that goes back to the service of it. You got a house that's a year, 2, 3, 4, whatever. You call me, I'm gonna respond to you. Sometimes it may not be the answer you totally want, but we try to keep people happy, and that's the secret of success of on down the road. And by using the same subs, 99% of the time we don't charge the customer. I mean, we go into a service call, we get in, get out, fix it, and we're gone.
Okay, well that's great to know.
Steve will walk somebody into the cabinet shop, and they will meet with that cabinet builder and be very involved in what they're picking out and the quality and the finishes that they got. So that's the nice thing. It is truly custom.
Yeah, our relationship with that cabinet company is as long as I've been in business, in the believe it or not category, 40 years.
And so you said your wife is, she works with you.
She helps with the billing and paperwork and such like that.
Okay.
I do all the, meet and greet and on site and all that type of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So in Alabama, where are you seeing the trend in building? Or is it still the growth out into West Mobile, or is it kind of moving a little bit?
It's really scattered all over the city and the county. Mobile's in a very positive way. They're moving the airport now. We've got a lot of industry that's coming to town between the shipyards, and the aerospace is huge.
Yeah, oh sure, yeah.
And we're expecting like 4,000 to 8,000 new jobs in the next 2 years coming to Mobile. Wow. And so that goes back to all the lots being bought up. It's just and people, believe it or not, is buying homes and bulldozing them in the $300,000 and $400,000 to get a lot.
Bulldozing them, and there's nothing wrong with them.
They're older home. They want a new home in there, and so they're buying homes in that price range. I've done several over the last few years where they bought it in the $300,000 range and put a bulldozer on it, and we started fresh.
Oh, that makes me nervous.
A lot of that in the Fairhope area too.
Yeah.
In those older neighborhoods, they'll go in and bulldoze a $500,000 house just for the lot.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah, that goes to the demand. Because we're bringing a lot of good jobs and a lot of high paying jobs.
Mr. Steve, you taught me a lot today. I'm glad we had you on. Is there anything did I miss anything, Dan? Was there anything left that we wanted to cover?
Well, I think it's just important to review your contract. I think, typically on your larger custom homes, they seem to be more of a cost plus type of contract versus a fixed price. So you need to know where you're at on that. And that's why it's really important to select that right builder, because if you're doing a cost plus, you want to make sure you can get it done for that budget, and somebody just didn't give you a low ball number to get the job.
Absolutely. That's great information. Mr. Steve, I appreciate you so much being on today. It was a pleasure to have you. I know we met last year at the concert, and when we were talking to Dan about coming on and the guest he was going to bring, he's like, well, what about Steve? I was like, oh yeah. So you've gave us a lot of things to think about, especially with the consumers who are getting ready to dive back into their plan about building. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Dan came on. We're slowly but surely having all of our management team on here. So I was glad that y'all got to come on together today.
Thank you, Jill. I appreciate being here.
I know. I thank y'all. Well, that's all for today. So join us next time. We're going to be diving into probably a little bit more community activity. We try to bounce back and forth between those topics. So y'all be sure to like and subscribe on all your platforms, and have a great day.